We're now going to look at how you choose your organization. The first thing you should know about this is that the trade-offs, choices, and other things you make are actually not dissimilar from places and things you've the strategic management courses. That's why this lecture will be comparatively brief, and I refer you to the textbook chapter and other additional materials if you wish to refresh your memory. Your choice of organization is multidimensional. The first dimension that most startup firms must engage in and choose is, of course, their team. Consider the interesting case of podcasting. Podcasting was founded essentially by This American Life with its leader, Ira Glass, who brought it to scale. Then followed other podcasts such as Planet Money. Planet Money had some very successful episodes. But all of these were in public radio. The founders of Planet Money had another idea. Adam Bloomberg, who was one of the founders of Planet Money, ended up partnering with Matt Lieber, who was an MBA student from the MIT Sloan School of Management and had a vast amount of experience. Notice what is interesting. You had podcasting, which was previously a very creative activity, with very little in the way of business and commercialization brought to it. Bloomberg, who had a successful career in podcasting, decided to found Gimlet Media. Gimlet Media was designed to be something like the HBO of podcasting. Bloomberg founded it and decided to mimic some of the things he had learned previously from Glass. But in order to keep him on track, to keep him focused, he needed Lieber to come in and manage the business side of things. The important thing about this is all this occurred within months of the founding of Gimlet Media. This highlights the importance of the choice of team. Who is the first person you hire into a startup? Who are the second? You want to think about where you want to go as an organization to make these selections. But of course, you need some very important characteristics that are almost universal. First, you want people to have complementary skill sets. Bloomberg and Lieber had different sets of skills, but both of which were needed for business success. And you want to ensure that they have a shared vision. This is an interesting part of the podcast realm, creativity mixed with business. There are some podcasts called the Startup Podcast that I'll put links into that go through that trial and tribulation. It is worth your attention if you're interested about these issues. Team is one thing. Getting your first hires right is important. But part of that is understanding what you are hiring people for. And essentially, that is to develop the capabilities of your organization. That is the stuff that your organization does well. Importantly, like everything else, you can't be good at everything. You have to choose the capabilities you want to develop and focus and double down on them. To give you an idea of this, consider the case of American Girl doll. American Girl doll was founded by Pleasant Rowland. You can see some of her founding vision in the readings. Pleasant Rowland had the idea of making dolls, but not just any dolls. These were dolls that were tied to history and to particular stories, meant to inspire, of course, in this case, girls, young girls, in terms of what they might be doing with their lives. And so you can see that the dolls came from all walks of life. But what's very interesting is about how this evolved. Initially, it was a mail order, very expensive dolls, and then it evolved into the American Girl Place venues. And let me tell you, as someone who has been into these venues to buy the doll you see here, which looks a lot like my daughter, by the way, or at least how she used to look. This is an organization that is driven towards that experience and towards maximizing, well, your ability to appropriate value there. When you step into an American Girl Place, you can see numerous elements. It's an entire experience, not just a store. Sure, there are dolls, there's stories, accessories, etc., as you'd expect to see. But you could also do things such as have tea with you, your daughter, and of course their doll. And you can also get hair done, not just for your daughter, but also the doll as well. You can see that here. It seems to me that being able to style the hair of a doll is actually a lot easier than a squirming child. But it is important. They are developing capabilities for this one purpose. When you do that, you exclude others. There is no doubt who is being excluded from American Girl Place. There's no doubt who it's not for. For some people, they're only interested in the wallet that they can carry around. This reflects the importance of getting your internal organization aligned towards your strategy. You have to have a very clear idea of the capabilities you're building. And moreover, you have to expect to improve over time. So what are the mechanisms by which you're going to learn and experiment? Are you going to run pilots? Are you going to run data? Are you going to run focus groups? Or are you going to measure things in other ways? This is the realm of marketing, of course, but you can bring it all together. And then finally, part of your internal organization is how you establish the norms and incentives for a great firm culture. How does everybody in American Girl Doll know what their focus is and know what they're doing? In some sense, in that case, it's not a mystery. But you want to make sure you've got the right people to drive that vision forward. One of the first key decisions, maybe the most important in terms of your capabilities, which of the capabilities are you going to have yourself, develop yourself, and which are you going to buy in because they exist in other firms? What are the trade-offs there? Broadly speaking, when you launch your product, can choose to drill down on functional elements and develop capabilities directly for that. Or alternatively, you can try and develop capabilities across a broad number of functions. One function or a broad number of functions. Now, obviously, doing it over a broad number of functions is harder at first glance than drilling down on a single function. That's sometimes what we call focusing on core capabilities. However, the integrated function is important when getting the links between them is important. When that's important, just not for what you're doing now, your overall vision, but also how you evolve into the future. Perhaps the easiest way to conceptualize this is to think about this in a dynamic sense. When choosing whether to make or buy with respect to a particular good or service, a startup must trade off its ability to procure externally the best products that are available externally, globally, for that purpose, versus your ability to have your own dynamic path and fit it towards your own ends. If you imagined that we had a graph over time of performance, what you're doing is if you choose to buy something externally, you can choose high performance. And moreover, but you can't guide how that performance evolves. By contrast, if you choose to make, invariably you will not be as good as other places in so doing. But you're basing that on a thesis that what you need to do is make yourself so that it becomes better performance over time. And that may be because this performance criteria is something that is specific to your firm and your vision, and not to other things. So what you have here is you make in order to get to a better point, and you buy in order to be the best initially. These are the trade-offs you face. Third, what resources do you need to be able to control in order to build your organization and its vision? Once again, we have the trade-off between functional and integrated. Do you want resources that are specific to a particular function of the business? Or do you need resources that can operate and be shared across many functions? All this becomes important because it can set your external position. The resources you have will define things like the relationships and what you can deliver to customers, chains, what sort of research and learning you're able to undertake, what sort of reputation you want, how you establish that reputation, and what sort of leadership you achieve in the industry. In other words, it's where you are. What is the market you're competing with? And what resources define whether you're in that market? Consider the example. Tesla was producing electric cars. But was it competing against other electric car makers? For instance, Toyota with its Prius? Or was it competing against other car makers, such as BMW or Mercedes-Benz? A few years ago, Elon Musk gave us the answer when he took key resources that Tesla had, its patent portfolio, and made them open to anyone. They were not going to enforce their patents. Why did they do that? Because Musk was interested in competing in the overall car market, which meant that he didn't need to have his patents that were specific to electricity and electric cars. In fact, he wanted other people to access and use them so that electric could compete more broadly in the car market. Another choice you have with regard to resources is how close you are to them. Where are you going to get your talent and your capital? Just to name the two biggest classes. Amazon, at its founding, could have located anywhere. It was selling books, but it wasn't storing books or anything like that. In the end, Jeff Bezos chose Seattle as the place to found that organization. It had a couple of tech firms already there, most notably Boeing and Microsoft. So it was a place to be able to get some of the talent that was needed. Many other firms locate closer to the capital. For many firms within the Creative Destruction Lab, the issue is whether to locate at their initial location, for instance, Toronto, or to migrate to a location with a lot more startups and with it, the ecosystem to support it. That would be Silicon Valley. Obviously, the trade-offs between these two choices depend on what your choice of organization is. What resources do you need to have access to? And how important is it to be in an ecosystem that does that? In the end, these choices of team, capabilities, and resources are ones that choose your organization. And they are also bound up with something that can also be a choice. That is the culture or management style you choose to pursue. Is it going to be a very competitive organization, an open organization, a secretive organization? These all interact with one another to comprise your choice of organization. And it's a place where you can take the learning from organizations courses, leadership courses, and a bit of other places, such as operations, to generate the right path for a startup.